Three, two, one. Happy 1994! Ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to 1994. There it is.
The year was 1994. American President Bill Clinton had just signed into law the North American Free Trade Agreement, and the Zapatistas in Mexico seized several city hall buildings in a mass protest against it. American figure skater Tonya Harding conspired to take out her teammate and later stopped the Olympics. Why? Because her shoe was untied. Schindler's List swept to the Oscars and O.J. Simpson appeared on the big screen for the last time. In the world of popular music, Nine Inch Nails released their Johnny Cash cover, Ace of Base saw The Sign, and Kurt Cobain completed his second suicide attempt that year. Cobain struggled to cope with the sudden stardom thrust upon him as he became the poster boy for heavy music in 1991 with the release of Nirvana's Nevermind. His was the face that launched 1,000 careers and drew the world's attention to the Pacific Northwest. Music fans were tired of the pretty boy debauchery that dominated the charts of the 1980s, and the music industry seized upon this new, sludgy music coming out of Seattle.
All the kids know about it.
While some underground rumblings had previously erupted from time to time, they were largely seen as singular in their style and no threat to the status quo. Almost simultaneously, Pearl Jam and Nirvana seemed to come out of nowhere and ushered in the era of grunge. Much like punk in its early days, grunge was difficult to define and spawned an infinite number of imitators. Even established acts tried to cash in on the fad. Also, much like punk in its early days, it didn't take long for this new sensation to flame out. The death of early punk gave rise to effeminate men and masculine women.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
The death of grunge gave way to baggy pants and skateboards. Attention shifted south from Washington to California, where an old scene was being revitalized by a new generation. The tastemakers of the American music industry had somehow stumbled upon the long-forgotten punk rock, which boiled and festered underground for the past decade, splintering in any number of directions. And in 1994, punk broke loose once more. Hi everybody, Brendan here with another edition of This Month in Punk Rock History. It's April 2024, and this month in punk rock history, we take a look at the Offspring's third album, Smash, which made its debut on April 8th, 1994. But first...
You're watching the Sweet Jimmy Network. Please like, subscribe, and share. Want to support the channel? Check out our eBay store full of really great collectibles and antiques. Proceeds go to new equipment, because it's a shit show here.
As grunge died in agonizing death, replete with suicides, overdoses, and unsuccessful civil action, punk began to emerge from its decade-long hibernation. It was around this time when a Green Day demo was being shopped around to various labels by manager Elliot Kahn. Warner Brothers' Rob Cavallo caught wind of it and immediately offered the Bay Area punks $300,000 and told them to give him a record.
I saw your performance in my limo. I must tell you, it was terrific. Yeah. In fact, I think it's so good, I'm going to give you a 6-album deal starting tomorrow. See you in my office.
In February 1994, they released Dookie. It was an instant mainstream hit. Within 2 weeks, Billboard listed the album at number 1 on their Heatseekers chart. The dam was starting to break. In the coming months, Green Day was all over MTV and the late-night talk show circuit.
This is 120 Minutes. I'm Louis Largent, and this is Billy Joe, this is Mike, and that's Trey Cool. They're all from Green Day.
Dookie hit Billboard's top 200 and sold more than 65,000 copies. 7 weeks after Green Day's major label debut, another California group started to catch on almost as quickly.
I'm just a sucker with no self-esteem, saying Dexter Holland, a molecular biology PhD who's the lead singer of this band. Mazin.
What is The Descendants?
No.
Orange County's The Offspring released their third album, Smash, on Brett Gurowitz's independent label Epitaph Records. Smash quickly caught on. In just about 3 weeks, Billboard reported the album was a strong seller in the Pacific and mountain markets, which collectively cover pretty much the entire western United States. Clearly, they didn't stop there. By August, over 1 million copies were sold, earning the RIAA Platinum status, and by year's end, it had reached triple platinum. The story of The Offspring starts in Irvine, California, where Social Distortion played a sold-out gig. 2 kids who knew each other from the Pacifica High School track team made the trek from Garden Grove to Irvine, where they were turned away at the door.
Access denied.
Brian Dexter Holland and Greg Kriesel later found themselves at a house party where they decided to form their own band. And so, the seed was planted for Manic Subsidal.
Excellent!
They quickly recruited Doug Thompson for vocals and Jim Benton for drums. Thompson was the first to flake, prompting Dexter to take over vocal duties. Benton apparently was only a drummer in theory, as he never quite got around to getting a drum kit. He was replaced by James Lilia, who they today consider their actual first drummer.
Well, so welcome, James. James Lilia. Dr. James Lilia.
Dr. James Lilia.
MD. James, for people who don't know, James was our first drummer.
That's right.
If you don't count Jim Benton. But that's not really...
He never really got drums, though. If he didn't get drums, he never even got a drum kit, did he?
Not really.
So
not
then,
really.
Can you really consider him your first drummer? The first drummer we ever really played,
sort
with
of a
band
drummer
with,
in theory. But
was
not in
James.
practice, right? Yeah, the first real drummer we had was James, and this is going way back to 1984.
It's worth noting that somewhere in that mix was also a guy named Marcus Parrish, but he's kind of like Chuck from Happy Days. He went off to college or something, and everybody forgot he existed, including the band.
Well, I gotta go to basketball practice.
Lilia was already in a band called Clowns of Death and agreed to join Manic Subsidal on the condition that Holland join the Clowns. So Lilia drummed in both bands and Dexter sang in both bands. In 1985, Manic Subsidal poached Clowns of Death guitarist Kevin Noodles Wasserman. Legend has it Wasserman, who was older than the others and working full-time as a school janitor, was recruited more for his ability to buy beer than he was for his guitar skills.
Excuse me, I'm wondering, could you,
Buy you a bottle of booze? Yeah, I know, you lost your ID. What kind do you want?
Gee, that's terrific. Just some, old, Harper?
With no gigs to play and dwindling membership, the Clowns of Death were, well, dead. Manic Subsidal put out at least one demo, appeared on a compilation, and played a few gigs before changing their name. Most accounts attribute the change to frustration with promoters' frequent misspellings or misunderstandings of the name, but Spin Magazine's Daniel Cohn tells Bandsplain Podcast that it was negotiated as part of the Clowns of Death Manic Subsidal merger. The group went through a page-long list of names before they all agreed to name themselves after a recently released Vincent Price horror B-movie.
The Offspring. Rated R.
Dexter tells podcaster Chris Hardwick that it was Lilia who came up with the name. And so, regardless of rationale, Manic Subsidal was now the Offspring. They continued playing wherever they could. Remember, this was the mid-'80s. Los Angeles was largely over punk rock. This was the era of Motley Crue, Metallica, and Guns N' Roses. They gradually picked up a following in one of the last bastions of the punk scene, 924 Gilman Street in Berkeley, California. In 1986, the band put out their first official single, I'll Be Waiting, backed with Blackball. To date, these two songs are the only recordings with drummer James Lilia, who left the band the following year to pursue his medical education. Lilia was replaced by 16-year-old drummer Ron Welty, who remained with the band until 2003. In 1989, they put out their first full-length album. The self-titled LP featured cover art by Mark Rude, who had previously lent his talents to Battalion of Saints and the Misfits. It was produced by Tom Wilson, who had previously worked with TSOL, The Adolescents, and Seals and Crofts. With obvious influence by TSOL and The Adolescents, the album caught the attention of only a few punk rockers and is largely ignored by the band today. With the exception of Beheaded, a track co-written by former drummer James Lilia, none of these songs make it into regular rotation. Before we move on from this album, I want to draw your attention to one track. The Vandals-esque Kill the President was left off future reissues of this album. According to Holland, this is to avoid any undue political or legal pressures on the band or the label. In a 1990 interview with Maximum Rock and Roll, Noodles made clear, quote, "We don't want anyone to go out with a gun and kill the guy. The song is more about democracy. It's a shock line." In 1991, they helped represent Southern California on the Flipside fanzine compilation The Big One. On the flip side of the Flipside comp, Northern California is repped by Mr. T Experience and Green Day, among others. The Offspring recorded their contribution, Take It Like a Man, at Westlake Studio with engineer Brett Gurewitz. They saw this as an opportunity. If they could impress Mr. Brett, he might sign them to Epitaph Records, home to Down by Law, NoFX, Pennywise, and of course, Bad Religion. As the story goes, Gurewitz challenged Holland to a friendly game of chess, which was apparently common practice for the Bad Religion guitarist. Holland weighed whether he should let Gurewitz win. Either Holland would win and impress Brett enough to sign his band, or he would let Gurewitz win and butter him up enough to sign his band. Holland chose option A. He beat his opponent, and the indie record label mogul passed on signing the Offspring, at least for now. The Gurewitz-engineered Take It Like a Man would resurface later in the group's discography. In early 1994, they went back into Track Record Studios to record their third album. Noodles recalls the individual band members predicting sales.
So then when you're making Smash, it's not like you're making this big record, you're making another record.
Yeah, seriously, I think when we started making Smash, Ignition was maybe 40,000 copies worldwide.
Wow.
And we were talking about Smash, we were going, oh, this is going to be even bigger. It's going to be like 70,000 worldwide. I think Greg at the time had the highest thing. It's going to be 150,000 worldwide. This is, okay,
That's
Greg.
so funny.
Yeah,
He's like,
sure,
we'll
Greg.
do 70,000
sure.
a time.
Meanwhile,
yeah.
With a budget of only $20,000, they did everything they could to get the most bang for their buck. They often called the studio for late-night slots or cancellation slots. With Tom Wilson returning to the mixing board, Dexter picked up the guitar for the first time in studio. At the end of their roughly 2-month session, they had laid down 12 tracks, including some intermittent emceeing.
Let's see what's next.
And a cover of the 1990 song Killboy Powerhead by punk contemporaries The Digits from Central Illinois. They were about to wrap up when Dexter revealed an ace he had kept up his sleeve. He had been messing around with a couple of different guitar riffs, one surf-inspired and the other Middle Eastern-inspired. He combined the two, and the melody for their landmark single was born.
I just kind of made up that riff one day, just kind of messing around, just doing the... And it just kind of happened to be in the same key as that other riff I was working on, and thought, well, I wonder, let's see how these two train wrecks go together, and it just kind of seemed to work.
With lyrics inspired by Holland's daily commute through East LA gangland, Come Out and Play was introduced almost as a completed song. Holland says something was missing, though. The tune seemed to have natural breaks, and for a filler, the group recruited fan-turned-friend Jason Blackball McLean for the signature line,
"You gotta keep them separated."
The line, according to Holland, came to him in the USC biology lab.
I was working in the lab late one night.
So I made up like a gallon of this stuff, this gunk, and I put it in these 2 flasks because it wouldn't fit in one. So you put them in there, but then you got to sterilize it. So you put it in this big pressurized oven called an autoclave. And these things are very, very hot. So you put it under this place called the hood, and it's like a hood on a stovetop or whatever. And it cools them off and stuff. It's still hot later and later. I'm going back half an hour later, and I look at them. They're next to each other, and I go, these things are never going to cool down. I got to keep them separated. And so I pulled them apart, and then I sort of light bulb went off. It's like, you don't believe me, huh?
No, I totally believe you. I'm just thinking that's a long way to go to get to that part of the story.
The art direction is credited to Kevin Head and Fred Hidalgo, who also designed the artwork for the Bad Religion album Recipe for Hate, as well as NoFX's Punk in Drublic, 10 Foot Pole's Rev, and the first 3 albums by Pennywise. The combination of distorted type font and X-ray image of a skeleton's upper body is said to represent some of the themes explored on the album, such as suicide, genocide, violence, addiction, and abuse. While the band was in the studio recording this album, Mr. Brett called on a friend and former Bad Religion drummer Jay Ziskraut to help set up Epitaph's international branch. With an apartment office and about 3 employees, Eurotaph, as they jokingly called it, hyped the Offspring to various European distributors, building demand before the album was even complete. There's no way anyone could have predicted the skyrocketing success of this album, but in 2014, Epitaph boss Brett Gurewitz called the track, quote, unique and extremely infectious. He told Rolling Stone, "I don't know if it was clear to everyone that Come Out and Play should be the first single, but it was definitely clear to me." Epitaph brought the song to influential radio station KROQ in Los Angeles. K-Rock was so influential that they had the power to make or break a band. The station was met with a never-ending barrage of demo tapes and debut singles. They held listening sessions where they would decide what to air and what to ignore. At one such meeting, Come Out and Play was one of 15 songs considered for air, and the only one to make it. Drive-time DJ Jed the Fish was the first to play the song. By June, Billboard ranked the single as number 55 on radio airplay. It wasn't released as a standalone single, though. In the US, Come Out and Play was an album-only track and promotion-only single, meaning it was not commercially available on its own, and if you wanted to play it in your Discman, you had to buy the CD. The song's popularity was the driving force behind album sales. They had recorded a video for Come Out and Play on a $5,000 budget with hopes of getting on MTV's Alternative Nation. It too spread like wildfire, helping to cement the Offspring's place in music history. According to the September 22, 1994 issue of Rolling Stone, Welty and Creasel were the first ones to quit their day jobs. Holland had taken a temporary leave of absence from USC, and Noodles likewise took leave from his job as head custodian at an elementary school. They were uncertain but encouraged by record sales and convinced by their manager to pour all their efforts into making a living as a band.
That's a great album. Put it back.
There was no turning back. Gurewitz has said in several interviews that Epitaph in 1994 was staffed by only 4 or 5 people, including him. Demand for the album was so high that Gurewitz took out a second mortgage on his home in order to continue production. The modest Epitaph offices were filled with pallets of Smash. Epitaph rented another warehouse and still had trouble keeping up with demand. In a short time, Smash had become the best-selling independent album ever. Epitaph struggled to maintain its independence as major after major made offers to buy or partner with Epitaph.
Shut up and take my money.
Guys in suits tried to convince Gurewitz that they'd be doing him a favor since they already had the infrastructure to manufacture and distribute such volume, and he simply did not. Gurewitz resisted, even though his band, Bad Religion, had just signed to Atlantic Records. Shortly after Bad Religion signed with Atlantic, however, Gurewitz left the group. The official propaganda from Atlantic said it was so he could focus on Epitaph, and while this was partially true, Gurewitz said it was over a fight with bassist Jay Bentley. This was also partially true. In 1997, he told Goldmine magazine that he quit because it had, quote, just become unbearable to stay. He was burnt out, going through the motions, irritable towards his bandmates. He had put literally everything he had on the line to make this little indie label a success and meet the demand of this unprecedented punk phenomenon. To say he was stressed out was an understatement. Gurewitz, sober since April 14, 1987, fell off the wagon.
So I from April 14th, 1987 to roughly 94, I was sober, and Bad Religion put out a record a year for 7 years. Right. Yeah, I was doing 100-hour weeks. It was insane. And put out 7 Bad Religion records, put out a bunch of NoFX records, in 94, the roof blew off, and we had platinum records for Offspring, gold records for Bad Religion, gold records on another label, gold records with Rancid. Pennywise were darn near. They're doing 300,000 copies of each record. Right. And then I had this massive business and financial success, and it messed me up. And I fell off the wagon.
Smash was the second of a 3-album contract with Epitaph. Offspring's next album, however, would be released by Columbia Records. So here's what went down. Epitaph was still owed one more album as per their contract, so Brett et al. Took the band to court.
What you are witnessing is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in a California municipal court.
Epitaph argued the royalties be held in escrow to mitigate the label's loss should the band fail to deliver its third record. In other words, Gurewitz was holding the band's paychecks hostage. They were either going to give Epitaph their third album or their royalties. The Offspring, who had already faced taunts of sellout, signed with Sony's Columbia Records on May 16, 1996. Gurewitz was broken. Pennywise's Fletcher Dragg recalls tears in Mr. Brett's eyes. It's disappointing, and I feel betrayed, Gurewitz told MTV News. There was a lot of speculation at the time that Gurewitz was going to sell the label. Though he denies this was ever a consideration, it was a factor that weighed toward the Offspring's decision to leave. Upon the release of the third album, Ixnay on the Ombre, Gurewitz is said to have called the record, quote, uninspired derivative pablum, and that, quote, one song sounds like Jane's Addiction, one Bon Jovi, one Blind Melon, one Bad Religion. In a contentious 1997 interview with Lollipop magazine published 1 month after an Offspring feature, Gurewitz says, quote, their new song sounds like the Scorpions. He discusses feelings of being stabbed in the back and says the Offspring sold out for big money everything punk rock ever stood for. Gurewitz doesn't hold back in this interview, going so far as to say, quote, I heard they officially changed their name to Lying Sacks of Shit. In a feature piece published in the prior issue of the magazine, Noodles also gets personal, saying, quote, ultimately, Brett needed to raise the capital. He was not going to be able to keep the company liquid because of his divorce. Half the company was going to be his wife's. The guitarist later says that they still hang out with other Epitaph bands, but, quote, sometimes it becomes a heated argument. Fletcher from Pennywise thinks we sold our souls to the devil, but we'll still get together and drink and argue about it. Finally, Noodle says of the new label, they've just been great. Taking another shot at Gurewitz, as well as the widespread outrage among the punk community, Offspring frontman Dexter Holland took to the band's official email list.
You've got mail.
In an open letter to fans, Holland defends the group's decision, writing, quote, we couldn't deal with Brett anymore. Brett's more concerned about making his label big than he is about helping his bands. That's basically what it's about, and why we left. Holland goes on to cite Gurewitz's supposed confession that he intended to sell a piece of the label in order to raise capital. Holland also cites Mr. Brett's rubbing elbows with Sir Richard, who parlayed Nevermind the Bollocks into a British multinational venture capital conglomerate. The letter claims Gurewitz encouraged the band several times to sell the album to a major, but they refused. We took less money to sign with Columbia, the letter concludes. We had to sign for more records to go with Columbia. Our signing with Columbia was not to try to make more money. We did it because we won't record for someone who thinks he can force us to. We won't record for a guy who's worse than a major label. We're gonna do whatever the fuck we want to. It took a few years, but they eventually buried the proverbial hatchet. In 2014, Gurewitz told Rolling Stone that he regrets trashing the Offspring in the press. Emotions got heated, said Mr. Brett, but really, I don't think any musician ever deserves to be judged for making any business decision for themselves. They weren't having cockfights in their backyard, they weren't spilling oil off the coast, they signed to a major label. Who gives a fuck? In the same article, the band reflects on that time. All of a sudden, says Noodles, we were taking a lot of heat, like, oh man, those guys are selling out, they're not punks. Isn't it ironic, asks Holland. You start a punk band because you feel like you're being ostracized. Then your punk band gets big, and you get ostracized again. Gurewitz and the members of The Offspring weren't the only ones cashing in on success. When asked if he liked their cover of Killboy Powerhead, Digits frontman Rick Sims says, I love their version of the song. I'm still living in a house that The Offspring paid for. I'm still driving a car that The Offspring paid for. I have a retirement estate that The Offspring paid for. You know the part in Come Out and Play that goes, well, in April 1995, the Los Angeles Times reported that Posh Boy Records founder Robbie Fields thought that sounded suspiciously similar to the riff in Agent Orange's Bloodstained. So Fields wrote a letter to Epitaph demanding a licensing fee of, quote, 1 cent for each Offspring album sold. Offspring manager Jim Garanot is quoted in the article calling Fields' bluff. If Fields feels he has something, he'll sue. It never came to that, and the matter quietly fizzled out. Mostly. The article quotes Adolescents guitarist Frank Agnew saying, quote, it just reeks to me as if people are after a piece of the pie. Later that year, the Vandals released their song Aging Orange, a not-so-thinly veiled reference at the OG surf punk's claim with the lines, quote, back in ancient Egypt, many pharaohs went to jail for misappropriation of my Phrygian scale. In 2000, Mike Palm, who wrote the song, told OC Weekly that he had nothing to do with the dispute, but he felt it had merit. The Agent Orange frontman claims that there are multiple interviews in which Dexter Holland admits to lifting the riff. In a cruel twist of fate, the Offspring outright covered Bloodstains for the 2000 David Arquette film, Ready to Rumble. Since Palm doesn't hold the publishing rights to the song, this cover doesn't benefit him at all. Do you remember how we got to this point? It was thanks in part to snowboarding videos. Surf and skate videos had become the established pipeline for punk, but snowboarding was relatively new. The origins of the sport date back to about '79, but it didn't fully mature or catch on until the '90s.
Here's some equipment that makes the 21st century look like it's already here. The Winter Stick looks like a tongue depressor for the Jolly Green Giant. The Winter Stick is ridden just like a surfboard, if you had to ride one at high tide in a pine forest.
While skateboarding and surfing could be done on the cheap, snowboarding requires a significant investment in equipment, clothing, accessories, and access to crowded ski slopes. Snowboarding was the sport of choice for suburban middle-class punks, and as Flipside Fanzine once wrote, all of a sudden, every kid with a snowboard was punk. Mansplain Podcast quotes the magazine.
I want to talk about a man named Todd. He is not given a last name in this piece. Todd from Flipside. Todd from Flipside is a goddamn brilliant genius. The Offspring did it with the advent of the snowboard videos. I remember bands like Big Drill Car, shout out Big Drill Car, great band, trying to get into that kind of stuff so hard and it just didn't click. And then all of a sudden, every kid with a snowboard was punk. Every kid with a snowboard was punk. People with snowboards also have expendable income, which is something that punk rockers never really had before. And if you're in a mall, those people are there to shop, not to overthrow the government. Bruv, the wisdom in these lines. Like, he fucking nailed it.
This major resurgence in punk, led by Green Day and The Offspring, was consumer-friendly. And if you're flipping through the CD racks at Sam Goody, you'll flip past Bad Religion to get to Bon Jovi. But if you wanted a t-shirt, spiked bracelet, gauged earrings, or Manic Panic hair dye, Sam Goody just wouldn't do. Turn right at the Orange Julius, go past the KB toy store, and right before you go to Sears, you'll see Hot Topic. You'll probably actually hear it first. Founded as a single standalone store in 1989 to serve the MTV generation, it had grown to a chain of over 70 stores that had expanded their selection of merchandise to include clothing geared toward alternative music fans. It is undeniable that the resurrection of punk supported a new consumer culture and helped propel Hot Topic to the multi-million-dollar corporation it would eventually become. And the growth of Hot Topic spawned a new breed of punk.
The mall punk.
If you and your friends wanted to go punk overnight, all you had to do was have your mom drop you off at the mall, pick up some bondage pants, a leather jacket, and some hair dye. As I alluded to way back in the beginning of today's journey, Green Day's Dookie cracked the dam, holding back a mainstream punk resurgence. But it was Smash that caused that dam to burst.
But it was no use. Water spurted from a dozen places.
Behind it was Rancid's Let's Go, Bad Religion's Stranger Than Fiction, NoFX's Punk in Drublic, and tons of other punk, pop punk, ska punk, and punk adjacent albums.
I leaped aside just as the dam broke.
Love it or hate it, and that seems to be the only two choices, the importance of this album cannot be understated. Smash signaled a new era in punk. The music wasn't as dangerous as it used to be, but it was still meaningful. The pop-punk revolution had a profound effect on youth culture. Besides the new demographic of consumer, the new wave of punk that followed Smash was socially conscious, but at the same time, it was fun.
Drivers are in such attitudes, but when I show my peaks, complaints see something's on. Feel like I'm God, you stupid, dumb shit, goddamn motherfucker!
And for punks of a certain age, your humble narrator included, Smash acted as a gateway to the otherwise inaccessible world of punk. For those of us too young to remember the isolated Bowery scene, but old enough to see the stereotypical punk rockers on TV and movies, Smash was a catalyst of new discovery. It encouraged the new generation to explore the band's back catalog and the rest of Epitaph's offerings. It prompted us to pile 6 punks into a Geo Metro and drive 2 hours to get to Warped Tour. Reading the thanks section of liner notes and seeing bands wearing the shirts of other bands sparks curiosity. Who were these people who my idols idolized? Very little is discussed regarding anything before Smash, and only a few pre-Smash songs are included regularly in the band's typical setlist. In discussing Smash's successor, Ixnay on the Hombre, the band themselves referred to the so-called sophomore slump, even though it was their 4th album. After reading, watching, and listening to various interviews in preparation for this month's video, it seems the band considers Smash to be their first real album.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about this. They really dissociated themselves from the first 2 albums. At this point already, from what I can tell, like, they were stopped playing almost any of the songs from the first 2 albums on tour. And I think they just fully drew a line in the sand and were like, those 2 albums basically don't exist. Why do you think that is?
It's a really good question because those albums helped get them to the point where they were able to succeed, but turning their back on where at this point, it feels like with Smash and Beyond, it is the band that they felt like they were comfortable with, that they weren't checking boxes, but actually being true to themselves and their own way.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true.
Because it is weird, because they haven't played any of the first self-titled songs, I think, since 92 or 94, since those pre-Smash days.
As of the writing of this month's stories, Smash 6 at 6 times platinum, and that curiosity that I just mentioned brought their previous album, Ignition, to gold in 1996. They have 6 albums that are presently at least 1 time platinum, and 3 others that are gold. They're up to 10 albums now, with the latest being released in 2021. Throughout their 40-year history, only Noodles and Dexter Holland remained the constants. We discussed what they consider their first drummer earlier. His replacement, Ron Welty, was fired in 2003 by Dexter and Noodles. In 2018, founding bassist Greg Kay was fired after 34 years with the group. Both Welty and Kriesel sued. Both lost. Part of their deal with Columbia was that the label would turn over their masters to the band after 18 years. The 2012 release of Days Go By fulfilled their release obligation, and 2 years later Columbia turned over the rights to the albums put out by the major label. The band had already bought back the rights to their first album from tiny independent Nemesis Records, and in 2015 Billboard announced that the band was putting their catalog up for sale. Roundhill Records, which is more of a rights acquisition group than a proper label, paid a reported $35 million for the Columbia albums. At that time, that catalog had generated only $3.1 million in gross sales. So that's it for our look at the Offspring Smash, the album that put punk back on the map. It was my gateway to punk. What was yours? Leave a comment and let us know. And join us next month when we fly to New York to bail Jane County out of jail. Meanwhile, check out previous editions of This Month in Punk Rock History, 60-second album reviews, and other offbeat offerings right here at the Sweet Jimmy Network. You can also dig through my archives via tiprh.start.page, and find me on TikTok if it hasn't been outlawed by the time this episode drops. For This Month in Punk Rock History, I'm Brendan McCabe.
Get out of here, kid! You had your fun, now